Hello. Let's continue working in our game. Today we are going to create a few traps and death animation for a player. Let's start by creating death animation. So let's go to the player, clips, let's create new clip. Animation clip, and let's call it death. Let's open our animator, make sure we're using the player. Let's drag our death clip here. And let's create animation itself. So let's select the player. Let's find here death. And let's go to the images. We should have here our death animation. Let's drag here as samples. I'm thinking 10 should be fine, but let's run and let's see. Yeah, I think it's worked fine. Another thing what we need to do is to make sure loop time is disabled. So now animation is ready and we can configure some transitions. So for death, we can switch from the any state. So I'm going to make transition to here to the death. And we need some condition. Let's create Boolean parameter called is death. And we're going to switch to the death animation when our player is when it's set to true, make sure it has no exit time and transition duration set to the 0. Also, we need to, inside of the transition from any state to the jump false, we need to add here also is that and set it to the false because we can switch to this animation from any state. So we don't want to switch to the jump fall animation when player is dead. Now what's left for that is to create the method inside of the player script, which will be responsible for player death. So let's open editor, full screen. So we would need to introduce new parameter, which we will call is that. Also, it will be the Boolean. So let's create here private. Something is not working. Okay, private Boolean and is that. So by default, it's false. And now we need to create method. Let's call it die. And we are going to use it as coroutine because we want it to be executed with some delay inside of it. So what is the coroutine? I think we haven't used coroutines yet. So this is the same method as usual, but it will return not the void as usually or like some parameter type, but it will return enumerator. Enumerator. So enumerator and then as usually method die. So for now, there is no much differences inside of the method. What we want to do? We want to set is that to true here. Next, we want to like add some knockback player um, to the left. So let's do here. We are going to use rigid body, linear velocity, and we're going to assign this to the knock back, knock back direction. So we have not created this yet. So let's go to the top and let's create maybe under the movement section. It should be serialized field because we want to configure this from the inspector. So now we have knockback and then we want to set animation. So I'm going to use animator set bool and we call parameter in is animator is that. So is that and value is that. Then because this is the enumerator, we want to wait for some time. So how, like usually in the method, we're going to use return and something, or if it's void, we are not returning anything. But if it's enumerator, we're going to type yield. Yield return, wait for seconds. Let's do small delay, like half of the second. And after this, we want to set linear velocity back to the 0. like to the not to the back, but to the zero. So first, what will happen? Some knockback would be applied, animation would be applied. Then we are waiting for half of the second, and we disable any velocity. So player would stay in one place and not going to move. Then inside of the update, we also, like when player is dead, we don't want any movement to be possible. So here I'm going to add if is dead, I'm simply return. So if this condition is true, this never would be executed because return would exit from the method. So next we want to start this coroutine, and we're going to start this coroutine when we are touching the trap. So let's create next object, which will be trap. We're going to create two kind of traps. So let's create new object and let's call it trap. Not we need some sprite, so I'm going to use 2D object sprite, and let's do triangle for trap, for our regular trap. Okay, and what we need is to book a collider because we want to interact when player is touching, but also we see that currently it's not visible. So we need to change layers. So let's see what do we have for our ground. We don't we using sorting layer player, but let's define new sorting layer and let's call it platform. Platform should be on top of background, but not on top of collectibles and not on top of player. Or maybe on top of no. Let's do it like this. Okay, where is player gone? Okay, so it will be number 4. So now select trap, select platform, and for platform, for our ground, we're also going to select platform. So now everything is visible, but I want to move it here. Okay, it's work fine. Now let's change maybe color to something more green to be less visible because this is the trap, something like this. So it'd be harder to detect. And next we need script. Let's go to the script and let's call it trap. So now we need to drag this script to the trap. Okay, and also we need collider. So I will use simple box collider 2D because we don't want to be colliding too big. So I think about something like this maybe. I think so when player only touching this part, collider would be executed, and let's make sure is trigger is selected because we don't want for player to stuck when he touched the collider, but we want player to move on, but for code to detect that this collision happened. And trap script would be really simple. We just need to create one method. Let's remove this. And our method is on trigger enter 2D. So there is on collision enter 2D and on trigger. So on trigger is enter is executed when we set on the collider this mark which is set trigger. Okay, so let's open it. And what we are going to do inside of this method. So first we are going to try to receive a player object, like player component from the object which we are colliding with. So we have here other 2D, which is collider, so I can use it. And from this collider, I can try to get component. And this component would be player. And next, we need to check if it really is player or not. So here I can add condition if player is not equal to null. I can take some action. So first, it will try to check and retrieve component of player from the object. And if it's not player, if there is no player component, this will be null, and this condition would never be executed. And now, since we have the player, we can call some method from the player. So we can do here start coroutine player. I think yeah, I didn't make it public. So where it is die. So let's do it public. Or maybe I think there is the better way to not call it start coroutine. Let's make this method private. And let's create another method which we will call damage, which will return nothing. Damage, because we don't want for trap to know exact kind of method which like to have some specific logic. We are going to simply execute method damage, and damage would be responsible for starting coroutine or do some any other action which is required. So I'm calling start coroutine, and inside of the start coroutine, I'm specifying the method which need to be executed, which is called die. So now inside of this trap, there is the method damage, which can be executed, but we no longer need start coroutine. So every time when player is touching the trap, and this will be executed. So now let's do some testing. So we have our trap, we have our player. Let's change the location a bit of the player. Let's move it somewhere here. Let's start the game. Okay. So collision happened. Player is no longer moving, but animation is never played. Is that here? Let's run it one more time. Make sure is that is set to true. Okay, so this is executed, and let's check what is wrong. I think we need to disable inside of the here of the transition from any state to the that. We need to disable can transit to self. So if we did that, it no longer transit to the like this dash and it's stuck. Let's try it again. Okay, he died, but also we created some knockback. Right now we don't have any values defined. Let's find where we have knockback direction, and let's do, I don't know, maybe 5 and 5. Let's see how it will behave. But it's moving into the wrong direction because we need to use -5 for x. So knockback direction, let's use -5. And I think y should be 5 is fine. Let's try. Okay. But probably our knockback duration is too big, or we need to wait for a longer time, because what happened right now? Let's try it again. So what's happened right now? Player is dying, knockback happened, but it's falling in the middle because we have here inside of the player, we are waiting for this half of the second, and then we are setting velocity to the 0. So we need increase wait for a second, or make this knockback less powerful, something -3 and 2 maybe. Let's try. Oh, I think I didn't change it. Sorry, because game was already launched. So let's try it to -3 and 2. And also we can increase always this waiting period of time. Let's try. Yeah, I think this worked better. So now we have our first kind of trap. Let's create another, which will be moving trap. So for this, we need parent object, which we'll call moving trap. And inside of this, we need few additional game objects. Let's move them here. First would be moving trap itself. So I think I can call this as moving trap. Uh, let's call it moving trap object. And this is points. So point 1 and this point 2, and we can have point 3. By these points, we would define where trap is going to move. Let's set here something so we can see. like how this will be moved. So for example, I can add first point somewhere here. Let's select next somewhere here and final somewhere here. So I would expect it to move something like this in this circle. How we can make trap to move? So first, logic of the touching the trap would be the same as for this trap which we already created. So what we can do, we can create new script. Let's call it moving trap. Let's delete this namespace stuff because we don't need it here. And let's open the trap. So here we have mono behavior. That means this class trap, which we created, inherit mono behavior and all of the method. But we can do the same. So for example, I have here the trap. And as base trap for moving trap, I can define the regular trap. And now uh, this class, which we just created, moving trap, has all of the methods defined here. So this on trigger enter to D, we have defined it here only one time, but moving trap also has it, even if we have not defined it. But what I would like prefer to do, so here it has modifier as private. So let's change this to the protected virtual. So what does it mean? That means that inside of the moving trap, if I need, I can change behavior of this method. How can I do it? So I can do it protected, override, on trigger enter to D. And here I'm going to execute based on trigger enter to D. So what does it mean? So as we have method defined here, which is virtual, here we are overriding this method, but inside of the body, we calling the base on trigger enter to D. And for example, I can do something like debug log moving trap. So let's see how it will work. We have this moving trap, and I need moving trap to be created as some kind of object. So to do sprite, let's choose circle. Moving trap object. Let's change sorting layer to the platform. So here it is. And let's put it somewhere here. So right now we can see that only one print statement here, and we're calling the base method from the original trap. So when I run it, let's run the game. Yeah, I forgot to create collider. Make sure it's trigger. So circle collider and trigger. And there is another thing which I forgot is to assign script. So now script here. Now let's run the game. And you see, we touch it, with player died. And here print statement was executed, which is say moving trap. So first, like method from the trap was executed, and then any additional functionality which we have was executed here. But we don't need this right now. We need to create movement logic. So how are we going to do it? We need to define few parameters. So let's create serialized field. First would be speed, how fast we're going to move. Also, I think it's nice to add some rotation for the object, so which also would be float rotation speed. And final, this is the points on which object would travel. So let's create this private. And as type, I'm going to use as array of transform. So let's use transform, but I'm going to add here square brackets. That means this is the array. And I call it target. So now let's go to the editor and you see what I mean by this array of targets. So here we have the speed, let's say 5, rotation maybe 15, and here is the targets. Right now this list is empty, and I want here to be 3 transform because I have them. So first, and I'm just going to drag all of these points. So we have 3 this position where our object is going to move. And also I want for object to always be located at first where uh, first waypoint is located. So let's create method start, not update, but start. This is where we are going to set our initial position for object. So I'm going to use transform position equal to the target 0 dot position. So this means that I will take first object of this array, which is this one, point 1. So it's located here. And this circle would be automatically moved into this location. So let's start the game and it should appear right here. Okay, this is done. Next, we need to do some movement logic. And this will be done inside of the update method. But let's create separate method in which we are going to do move. Like where object would be moved itself, to not add a lot of code inside of the update. So first, what we need to do is to call transform.position move toward. So inside of the transform.position, I'm using vector2 move towards, and I'm specifying the current position, which is transform position, and I'm specifying the target position, and I'm specifying the speed, and I need to multiply this on time dot delta time because I want this to be frame independent. So on any computer, it will be executed on the same speed because you may have computer which has like slower and frames executed the slower, and here it can be like super fast, so everything would be moving super fast. So that's why we are moving multiplying speed by time dot delta time to make movement the same no matter how many frames do you have. But this here we're using just 0, and this is not, we want this dynamically to update. So how can we do it? We can introduce new variable, and let's call it, it will be integer, and I would call it current target. And here I'm going to use current target. So first it will be 0 because we are not assigning any values, but somehow we need to increase this value. But before we're going to increase, let's do some rotation. So I'm going to execute transform.rotate, and inside of the transform.rotate, I need to specify like where rotation is supposed to happen. So I'm going to use new vector 3. Maybe there is some vectors. Okay, let's do new vector 3. It will be 0 on x, 0 on y, and on z we're going to use rotation speed multiplied by time delta time, which let me show you. Okay, I'm using circle. I was planning to use here the square. So can I choose this to the square? Where is, okay, so here is the square, and I need to change circle collider because it's no longer work for us. Let's use box collider 2D and make sure it's set to the trigger. And let's change the color. I think something about purple, maybe. Okay, something like this. And let's make it a bit smaller. So let's change its size to something like this. Okay. So now this is ready. We can start the game and let's see the rotation. So you see that's why I'm moving the Z, and it's moving because rotation on X and Z is not almost not like rotating not into the right direction. So that's why we need to modify the Z. So let's start the game, and it's not going to move yet, and it's not rotating. Okay, because we are not executing the code. And let's call it move inside of the update, and let's see rotation. So first it won't move because we are moving to the same target where it's already located, to the target 0. So we don't see any movement right now, but rotation should work. Let's run the game. Yeah, you see, it's rotating. A bit slow. I think we can increase rotation speed maybe to 30. So now we need to create the movement. How can we do it? So we can calculate the distance to current, like to the next point. So there is the method inside of the vector 2 called distance. And what we are going to compare, we are going to take current position of the object using transform.position, and we are going to uh, compare it with the targets. This is our list. I'm going to take current target and dot position. So it will return some now numeric value, and I think to check if it's less than 0.25. So once it's really close to the next target, what we need to do is to increase current target. And there is some formula which we can use, which is recommended here. Current target plus y plus 1, like module by target length. So it will return as current um, next element. And it will never, because we can have some here conditions to check if we're not um, reaching the bounds of our array because we have 3 elements, and if we're going to, we can do something here like this. Current target equal plus 1, so we will increase it by 1, but also then we would need to have some conditions. So if current target length is less than size of the array, but I think this formula supposed to work fine in our case. And now movement should be ready. Let's try to run the game. And you see, object is moving quite fast, but rotating is quite slow. We can maybe set rotation, where it is rotation, to the 50. Okay, I think it's looks fine. So now when we touch it, player is dead. And I think that's all for today. Have a nice day.